You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristodoulou.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristodoulou, and today I wrap up my offensive power ranking series as I've been ranking all the teams in the NFL within their divisions from worst to first, and we cap things off with, last but certainly not least, the NFC South division. Now, don't worry, we're doing defenses next, so if you've been enjoying these discussions here, we got to do it all over again, so be prepared for those to come out in the following weeks. But without further ado, make sure you comment down below. Give me your power rankings for the NFC South. Would love to hear all of your thoughts and opinions on maybe my opinions or on just the opinions you might have about some of these teams. What do you agree and disagree with? All of that would love to discuss. But beginning with the number 4 team at the very bottom of the NFC South, a team that has a ton of question marks, a lot of turnover going on right now, a new quarterback, and that is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yes, the Buccaneers going from what I would argue first to worst, as I believe I had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as the number 1 team in the division last year. This time around, though, they're sitting at the bottom. You have a new quarterback, you've lost some offensive linemen, and whether you think those are pluses or minuses really comes down to you, but quarterback situation in flux. You do still have some good wide receivers. Running back room is a bit of a question mark. There is a lot to kind of look at here and just leave yourself scratching your head in uncertainty as to how everything is going to play out. But right now, Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield duking it out in training camp to see who gets the quarterback 1 spot. I personally think it's going to wind up being Baker Mayfield over Kyle Trask. I don't necessarily know if that ends up being the case, obviously, but something kind of tells me that it winds up being Baker Mayfield, but I guess we'll have to just wait and see. I'm not necessarily super confident in either choice. I am a fan of Baker Mayfield's game, so for me personally, I've hated to see kind of how his career has spun out towards these last few years, but I am rooting for him, hoping the best for him. We'll see. But the trio of wide receivers you have, thankfully, will at least make whatever quarterbacks you end up winding up with's job a little bit easier. You still have Mike Evans. I would argue a Hall of Fame wide receiver with the production he's had throughout the entirety of his career. Chris Godwin, another excellent wide receiver. Russell Gage, coming over from Atlanta last season, I think is going to be another security blanket guy that can make some moves and plays for whoever ends up being that QB. And I'm not really too worried about the passing game, at least as far as everything else goes, besides the quarterback there. So you have some guys to help make whoever your quarterback's job is easier, but who is the quarterback? How are they going to fare? Don't really know. As for the running game, this is where a lot of question marks come into play here. It looks like Rachaad White is going to be running back 1, or at least get the opportunity out of the gate. He only averaged 3.7 yards per attempt last season on 129 attempts, so not necessarily any fantastic numbers by any means, not horrible, but you would want that number to be closer to that 4 yards per carry average than at 3.5. Chase Edmonds is also in the fold here. You have Keyshawn Vaughn, and then there's a handful of other bodies that you have for training camp as well. This is going to be a group that you really have to watch during the preseason and just kind of see how it winds up sorting itself out here. Maybe, veteran Chase Edmonds comes in and surprises some people. I don't really know how much gas he has left in the tank there, but this is a group that I'm just not too confident in, and I don't really know who's going to wind up being running back 1, but if I had to guess, I'm assuming it winds up being Rachaad White, but we'll just, again, have to wait and see. As for the offensive line, you are looking at a decent amount of turnover, enough to kind of leave you with more questions than answers, I would say, along that front 5 there. You do have arguably the best left tackle, or among the best left tackles in the NFL in Tristan Wirfs. There's a strong conversation for that one there. And then a healthy Ryan Jensen, in my opinion, at center is amongst the best centers in the NFL as well. So you do have some guys in some pretty key positions on the O-line already established for you, but you do have some guys that you're looking at to see kind of how they fare more so the right side of the offensive line when you really look at it. You have North Dakota State rookie Cody Mock, who is, it looks like, projected to be the starting right guard. And then you also have Luke Godecki, second-year guy, who's going to be plugging in at the right tackle spot potentially. At least these are what depth charts are showing me. This is not what I know, but this is just what the depth charts are showing me. But if that's going to be the case, a lot of youth, a lot of inexperience on the right side of the offensive line. So just a little bit of concern on how that side of the O-line is going to wind up faring throughout the duration of the long NFL season here. So again, overall, a team that just has a lot of questions, and I need answers to them all before I can really buy into what's going on here, hence why I have the team at number 4. Moving on to the number 3 spot here, I spent some time, and a decent amount of time at that, juggling who I was going to have at both number 2 and at number 3. I think the teams that I have in these spots here are a little bit tighter knit than some people might even realize, but I did opt to go at the number 3 spot with the Carolina Panthers. And the main reason of that is just the youth at the most important position on the football team in the quarterback spot here. When I look at this offense, Bryce Young is obviously very exciting, and Frank Reich I have a lot of respect for. I know things didn't really end well in Indianapolis for him, and as an Indianapolis Colts fan, I personally felt like it was kind of time to just make a split and move on and kind of, restart in Indianapolis altogether. But I'm excited to see what Frank Reich does over there in Carolina. And he made it very clear Bryce Young is QB1 for the foreseeable future, and hopefully that is a long foreseeable future. You did make some nice additions as far as the wide receiver room goes. You signed in DJ Chark from the Lions, a guy who can really spread defenses out. Adam Thielen from the Vikings. He is as sure-handed as they come in the NFL, and a guy who can run some really nice routes as well. You went and drafted Mississippi wide receiver Jonathan Mingo in the second round. So a clear initiative to upgrade the wide receiver room talent and just kind of restart at the position altogether. You also got Hayden Hurst at the tight end position. So clearly a lot of money and investment going on, a lot of moving parts and a lot of things changing as far as the number ones go over there on the offense and the skill position. So I'm a little bit concerned just about the amount of time it's going to take this team to really get together and click. It's not to say that the talent isn't there, but you are just looking at a lot of new faces in a lot of important places. So that's where my concerns about the team start to waver a little bit. But again, I think the talent is there, the upside is there, and they brought in a really good group of guys that I'm very confident in. And again, Bryce Young being the top quarterback coming out of this draft class here, I am hoping the best for Bryce Young. I don't know if size ends up being an issue. I don't think it's going to be an issue, but I do think he was probably the best passer in the draft class, and I don't really think you could go wrong with his ability there, but we'll wait and see. Do I think he's a surefire Hall of Famer? Absolutely not. It's got a long way to go, but I am excited to see what he does. As for the running game, when you look at the running back room here, obviously you have Chuba Hubbard in the fold. He did a lot for this team last year, especially after Christian McCaffrey parted ways, but Miles Sanders coming in from the Philadelphia Eagles, a guy that had 1,300 total yards last season with 11 touchdowns to boot. This is a huge addition to the offense where you're kind of saving yourself some money, but you still have a really good piece at the running back spot compared to the situation you were in with Christian McCaffrey, who was making a lot more, albeit I would argue a better player than Miles Sanders. But overall, I think there's still a lot of talent coming out of Miles Sanders. I think Chuba Hubbard is going to be an excellent number 2 option. I think it wasn't quite what you would have hoped to see from him as the number 1 last year. So pairing him with Miles Sanders, being able to split those reps and be a complement to Miles Sanders' games should be really good for this team. And then the offensive line, this is a group that I'm expecting to see improvement from, mainly because I do like a lot of the guys on the O-line. I think the talent in the group there is strong. It's just a matter of putting it all together. And mainly I'm looking at the left side when I look at some of the issues and concerns that I have. Listen, Ikem Ekwonu, big guy, super excited to see how he develops in Carolina. However, you look at what happened in 2022 with 13 total penalties and 6 sacks allowed. This is per PFF with the 6 sacks there. You have to be a little bit concerned about that. Penalties have got to be cleaned up. You cannot get away with holding after holding after holding. And on top of that, your left guard, Brady Christensen, during the time he played last year as well, also had a whopping 11 penalties. So you're looking at 24 total penalties between just your left guard and left tackle alone. The rest of your offensive line, though, I do feel good about. The right side, I would say, is the strength of the O-line here. Bradley Bozeman at center, your right guard, Austin Corbett, that they brought from the Rams a year ago. You obviously have Taylor Moton, who I would say is rock solid on the right side of that offensive line. I feel really good about the right side, but I am concerned about the blind side and how things go in terms of just cleaning up some of the disciplinary issues and also being able to protect a young and developing Bryce Young. But overall, I think there's a lot of talent in Carolina to be excited about. It's a new era, new head coach, new quarterback, a lot of new faces and skill position players. This is a group that has the sky as the limit. It's just a matter of can they get there and how long does it take them to get there. Now, jumping into the number 2 team here, and this is where things always get fun because I'm looking at number 2 and I'm looking at number 1, and how do I decide who sits at the top here, and how do I decide who is just going to be eked out and put into the first loser spot? And at number 2, I opted to go with the New Orleans Saints. Now, Hear me out on this one here, Saints fans. I know you're probably thinking with Derek Carr being the big offense or offseason addition at the quarterback spot, I am trying to say, this could be the opportunity to kind of recapture some of the magic you guys had from a few years ago with a very dominant offense. Well, I'm going to hold the horses just a little bit on that. I don't necessarily know if Derek Carr is a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Do I respect his game? Do I think he is a good option at the quarterback spot? Absolutely. I think that the uncertainty in Las Vegas for the last few years and just through the coaching changes and whatnot over the last few years with the drama that's gone around, I think it kind of wore itself thin. And I think that this move is going to be good for Derek Carr. And they're very clearly welcoming him. But I just don't quite know if Derek Carr has it anymore. I do sit back and think of the season where he was on like an MVP campaign and the Raiders were making a big push for the playoffs and he got hurt in what did it feel like, week 13, 14? I don't remember the exact week, but he ended up going down, missing the rest of the way. You had something Cook, who was your starting quarterback going into that that playoff game. I don't remember who it was exactly, but I do still sit there. I remember that. It's not it's a while ago, but I do remember that. But the good news is, despite my uncertainty about him, really good wide receiver room to work with. I do have a big question mark as far as Michael Thomas goes. Is he finally going to regain the form of, his 100 and whatever it was, 80 something receptions from a handful of years ago? Can he recapture even some of that magic? You have second year wide receiver Chris Olave. This is someone I'm really excited to see develop here. I think he looked good in his rookie season. I think he's going to get even better this year. Excellent route runner. And I think that is something that people are starting to realize more and more is an absolute key to a young wide receiver's development. The faster you can get the route running down, the better. And on top of that, you had an undrafted free agent in Rashid Shaheed come in last year, and it sounds like he's going to be holding down slot duties for you. He did an excellent job in the limited action he saw, and I'm excited to see him get more of an opportunity with New Orleans buying into what he showed. So it'll be really interesting to see how this all pairs out. But I don't know about Derek Carr. I really don't. This will be a big litmus test for him. Is the change of scenery what he needed, or the Raiders being willing to move on? What was their merit behind that decision there? The running game, I think, will be a really interesting group to watch. I'm a little bit concerned about how long of a potential suspension Alvin Kamara is going to have. Another thing that's kind of holding me back on really being all in on this offense, because one, does he get suspended? Two, and I kind of assume he's going to get a suspension. I don't know. But two, how long does the suspension end up being? But you do have Jamal Williams, who looked really good last year, and I think is an underrated running back in the NFL altogether. I love Jamal Williams as a person. I think he is quite the character. As a nerd myself, I can relate to his nerdiness on all kinds of levels here. And then you also went and drafted a running back from TCU in the third round as well, Kendre Miller. So be curious to see how he pans out here. But overall, running back room, I would say, is really solid and can be really strong, especially once Alvin Kamara is in the fold, should he end up having to serve some sort of suspension. But then the offensive line, I do have some concerns about here. When I look at the tackles, Trevor Penning, obviously limited last year. Does he wind up being the left tackle that you need him to be to solidify the blind side of your quarterback? The right tackle spot, Ryan Ramczyk, I don't even worry about him. He has been as good as they need to be for as long as he has been in the NFL at this point. Big man, doing big man things. He's already been paid. I can't say enough good things about him. No sweat about him. It's more so the interior offensive line that I'm really worried about, and it's more so the guards than anything else. So I'll be really keeping an eye on how the interior looks going into preseason and just who winds up playing the best, because I am a little bit concerned about that. And again, with my concerns regarding Derek Carr, if the interior of your offensive line is collapsing and the pocket's breaking down on him, I don't know how that's going to go. And that's where some of my concerns about this team really start to creep in. So hence why I do have them at the number 2 spot. And of course, with the Saints being at number 2, we move on to the Atlanta Falcons, my number 1 team for the NFC South here. And I kind of feel like there's a little bit of a hopefulness coming from me on this one here, but when I look at the roster right now on the offensive side of the ball, there's a lot to like about this group altogether. Now, obviously, Desmond Ridder, bit of a question mark here. Can he officially take over this offense and lead the way and be that guy? I think a lot of people are asking that question, and we're going to find out, and I'm really excited to see how this goes. He's a guy who has a ton of collegiate experience. Yes, he's a little bit older, but from the sounds of it, especially coming out of the Falcons training camp right now, everyone's really excited about the leadership he's showing. I think he has all the intangibles you could ask for in a quarterback. On top of that, the talent around him is there, and it's all in place. Drake London is going to be that number one guy. Hopefully he can come back and, he improves upon his rookie season. You also have Scotty Miller coming in from Tampa Bay. Not necessarily a big name, but a guy who did make some splash plays here and there when Brady was throwing to him the last couple of years. You also got Mac Hollins from the Las Vegas Raiders, and that's a guy to keep an eye on there. That's somebody that I really like, and I think this is an excellent move for him coming from Las Vegas. Then the tight end room, you have Kyle Pitts, you have Jonnu Smith, who's reuniting with Arthur Smith and their time that they spent at Tennessee together here. But I'm really excited to see Kyle Pitts. I hope he can come back from his injury last year, obviously dealing with the MCL that took him out. That was around like the midpoint of the season or something like that. But I'll be excited to see his growth and development here. I mean, he's such an athletic freak at the tight end position, such a mismatch. The 1,000 yards he had his rookie season. It's very clear that he can put it all together and be a gamer for this team. And I just have a hard time not buying into the skill at the wide receiver spot that you have. And then the tight end spot. And then you look at the running back room. The running back room is just as exciting. Tyler Algier came in last year and did an excellent job in some of the limited opportunities that he saw, but he's not going to be running back one. You have Bijan Robinson coming in now, and some of this, listen, I'm trying to not get too excited over training camp video clips and stuff like that. I'm spending a lot of time watching some stuff. Obviously, I'm seeing the highlights, not necessarily the lowlights. You don't really see those during this time of year, but it's hard to not be excited about what Bijan Robinson is going to do for this offense, especially knowing you have a guy like Tyler Algier backing him up. Cordell Patterson is still in the fold as well, and they were an excellent 1-2 punch prior to Bijan Robinson even coming in. And he's a 3-down premier do-it-all running back. I really feel like this is a match made in heaven, in large part because, again, you have a quarterback who's older. I know he's a second-year guy, but he is older for a second-year guy. You have a really great room of wide receivers, an excellent tight end, great running back room to boot, and then the offensive line, in my opinion, the best in the NFC South here. This is like, there's a lot that's mixing here, and I feel like it's going to taste really good when the product is done and served to us this season. I'm very excited for it. And I mean, like, again, the offensive line, only 37 sacks last season, somewhere a little bit above middle of the pack there. They had the third best rushing attack last year, minus Bijan Robinson. They were averaging about 160 yards a game. You throw Bijan Robinson in there, and the sky is the limit. I wouldn't be shocked if they're competing for the number one spot there to help ease up the pressure that's going to be on Desmond Ridder this season as well. But I mean, you have a ton of first-round selections here and just really good offensive linemen. Left tackle Jake Matthews has been doing it since 2014, and he's looked really good, rock solid on the blind side there. You go and draft offensive guard Matthew Bergeron in the second round to shore up the O-line a bit there. Your center's Drew Dahlman, solid option there. Then your right guard, Chris Lindstrom, according to PFF, graded as the number one offensive guard in the NFL. And then Caleb McCreary, also graded by PFF in the top 5 at number 4 as far as right tackles go. This is an excellent group, and I cannot stress enough. Does not matter how much talent that you have at the skill spots, even at the quarterback position. If your offensive line is poor, your offense is going to perform poorly. And the fact that you have so much potential upside right now in all of your skill areas, and you top it off with having the best offensive line within your division here, I think the Falcons are going to have themselves one hell of a season. Arthur Smith has done an excellent job so far in his short tenure in Atlanta, and I think this is going to be a real leap of a season for them. And the Falcons, in my opinion, are going to be challenging just off their offense alone. If the defense can catch up as well, offensive alone is going to help this team compete for that number 1 seed in the NFC South, and I'm really excited to see this team unfold. I'll be very disappointed if it backfires, and I have to eat all my words that I just said here, but I don't anticipate that happening. But that is my power rankings for the NFC South's offenses. Let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts and opinions on my power rankings. Give me yours and your breakdowns on these teams. But that is it for me. I appreciate you from watching this video. Again, defenses start up next. We'll dive through all 8 divisions like we did the offenses, so be prepared to catch those as well. But that is it for me. I will see you all next time. Have a good one.